Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Kenny, and welcome to this evening's panel discussion on how AI can propel the growth of Australia's unicorns. Welcome to those joining online through the live stream. And before we begin, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we gather on today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So Innovation Week, it's a now annual flagship event here at Melbourne Connect. It really provides a wonderful platform to explore the transformative power of technology. The Faculty of Engineering and IT, that's based here in the Melbourne Connect precinct, has always been at the forefront of fostering partnerships with industry leaders. Our successful faculty partnership with Airwallex is now in its second year, and it's a great example of this fostering of relationships. And we would like to thank Airwallex for sponsoring this event, and along with coffees throughout the week from the Superfloor Cafe. After our panel discussion, we'll invite you to join us for some drinks and networking just over here. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to our facilitator for this evening, Dr. Karen Han. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Hello? Okay. Oh, it's working now. Okay. So I'm very delighted to facilitating this panel discussion. Again, I don't know where Sarah is. Oh, okay. I want to just special thanks to Sarah, who actually spent huge time to prepare all these events today. Thank you very much, Sarah. Please give a big applause to her. So as you know, all know that, so in today's competitive environment now, so all these innovation is essential. So, and the AI actually hold this potential to make this huge opportunity from small startup to these $1 billion unicorns in the end. So based on this in this evening, so definitely we actually trying to discover this potential and invaluable insights, and also this actionable strategies to make it up working. So for entrepreneurs, also the inventors, investors, as well as these tech people, as so many AI researchers here as well, on leveraging this AI with these enhanced next generation of Australian unicorns. So please join me with this welcoming the panelists today. So firstly, I would like to joined by these Taylor Foxsmith, the head of community partnerships in Airwallex. So Taylor is the strategic leader with this proven track record in building the high growth partnerships, and she's been dedicated into empowering this next generation of Australian entrepreneurs. So we will learn a lot from you, Taylor, today. Thank you. Please give applause again. And Michael Cron, associate partner, Antler Australia. So he's the capital raising expert, having these advised startups and corporates for 10 plus years. And with these diverse backgrounds spanning environmental law, engineering, and education, strategic consulting, I was really surprised when you have all these things. And so definitely we will actually learn from you and bringing this kind of wealth of these experience to the table today. Thank you. Please give up applause. And the third is Professor Edward Hovey, Executive Director of Melbourne Connect here. And he is one of the most popular AI researcher leaders in the whole world, and have been working in the top US institute, including USC, Carnegie Mellon Uni, and DARPA. And he is also my research mentor in this natural language processing field as well. So Professor Hovey has served on board of several startups. One of them really was sold to Google. Congratulations again. And we will definitely learn from you both AI research side as well as the startups. Yeah. And our last panel is Nicola Smith, Associate Solution Architect at Amazon. And her expertise in cloud technology and generative AI across the startups. She helps founders and technical teams optimize their infrastructures and streamline operations. So thank you. We're delighted to have you today. Thank you. So I may just move on to the first panel discussion. So as we all know that currently the AI is all around the world and you cannot really even find the startups. It's really difficult to find the startups which doesn't really have AI these days. So I just want to double check it, like how do you think Australian startups will change this in this next 5 years?
Well, thanks so much for having us here, Karen, and thank you all for joining us here this evening. I would love to get a sense of the room, and those attending virtually, feel free to participate. We have 1,200 unicorns globally in the startup ecosystem, and a unicorn is an idea that reaches $1 billion valuation and retains its private ownership. Of that 1,200, only 9 have been born here in Australia. Can anyone confidently name one of those 9? Canva is one. Atlassian, no. Private, so it's still privately held, hasn't exited. Airwallex, great, yep, Airwallex. So that's 2. Oh, I didn't hear that one. Linktree, does anyone know Linktree? Culture Amp, Go One, Safety Culture, Employment Hero. A lot of these startups were born around a decade ago. And I think what we're seeing now is AI is accelerating the ambitions of those unicorns. You've got Safety Culture hiring their chief AI officer. You've got Canva acquiring Leonardo AI to help power their ambitions towards an exit. But I think the question that you asked was definitely around how is AI going to help power the next generation of unicorns? And I've thought about this a lot, and I think there are probably 3 ways that AI is going to power the next generation of unicorns. The first is eroding barriers to starting that startup in the first place. So what AI helps to do is automate the processes that have historically been quite burdensome for founders. I mean, I'm sitting next to Michael, who works with early stage founders almost throughout their journey. AI is allowing us to automate outbounding to acquire your first customer. It allows you to automate your website design and generating content that kind of educates your ideal customer on your value proposition. So startups are able to do more with less. So I think that's one way that AI is going to power the next generation of unicorns. The second is community. And community is a word that comes up a lot in the startup ecosystem. There is an incredible community that was started out of Sydney called Build Club. Has anybody heard of Build Club before? Yeah, so an incredible woman named Annie Liao identified that Australia has a very unique opportunity to leverage the next generation of AI builders to help create unicorns. And what community is doing is creating these open source collective knowledge systems that help us to create a talent pool, which can then help power the next generation of unicorns. And then I think the last one is AI startups themselves becoming unicorns. And I think I would love Michael's take on this too. VCs at the moment are very interested in vertically specific B2B AI applications. So how can an AI bot or tool solve a very specific pain point or problem statement for a very specific customer? But in order for that to help generate the next wave of unicorns, there actually needs to be appetite from those customers. And Salesforce released a really interesting report this year alone showing that 80% of C-suite execs are keen on AI. They want to use AI to power their businesses, but only 50% of those respondents felt like they were proficient in AI. So we've got this education gap right now where the customers who are going to buy the services of startups that are likely to become unicorns want to make that purchase, but maybe don't have the education or the AI literacy to feel fully intentional on buying that product in the first place. Michael, maybe I just even pass to you there really quickly, how you kind of think about AI powering the next generation of unicorns.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great start. But I'm going to just do a little bit of a history to start with. And I guess when you look historically at massive technological shifts or huge disruptive new innovations, what we typically see is the creation of the next wave of billion, $10 billion, $100 billion, $1 trillion companies even these days that are iconic brands that are just 100% prevalent in our lives today. We've seen that with chips. We saw it with PCs. We saw it with web, then cloud, mobile. And the next big shift that's upon us now, or the big platform shift, or the most exciting new technology that is being unearthed today is AI. So what we can expect to see over the next 5 to 10 years is certainly going to be that the next multi-billion dollar, potentially trillion-dollar companies are going to be created, and potentially there's one that's been started this week or last week or somewhere right near us that will be the next one of those companies. I guess what is even more exciting about that is that how much quicker the time to value is. So, chips took multiple decades to really get to full level of commercial maturity. Web took sort of 10 plus years, cloud 5 years, mobile just a few years. And what we're seeing with AI is it's happening even faster. So the pace of this technological change is so rapid that there's a huge opportunity for the next wave of huge companies to be built today and over the next couple of years. And definitely from a VC perspective, we deeply believe that these vintages, 2022, 23, 24, and 25, are probably going to be the highest performing vintages in the history of venture capital, or at least definitely since the last major technological shift at least. But where that gets particularly exciting for Australia is the globalization of technology, the globalization of talent, the globalization of capital. Historically, all these companies were formed out of the little enclave of Silicon Valley or in the States. But if you actually look at the data, what it shows is over the last decade, the majority of new unicorns have actually been formed outside of the US. It is a truly global game. And the way that's playing out at the grassroots is that if you want to start a company today, you start it where you are. You don't move to Silicon Valley to start your company. Maybe you'll flip up and move there later as you expand to a scale up. But fundamentally, people are building where they are. So being a truly global game now, and where we have a flywheel from, we currently have 9 unicorns. We have had 13 at one point. Some have already exited. There's a flywheel of talent, early employees of those companies who were like a critical part of building the success of those companies, but it wasn't their companies. And this really starts to spin the flywheel of the next generation of entrepreneurs. So you combine this massive platform shift with this deep talent density and the globalization of talent, markets, capital, and technology. And that means there's a huge opportunity for Australia to really capture a lot of value and drive a lot of value from this massive technology revolution that's going on.
Thanks, Michael. So followed by that question, so is there any kinds of challenges doing this globalization? I know that this Australia, we have this importance in globalization, but do we have any kinds of particular challenge, and is there any experience that you overcome that when you just consulting people before?
I think one big part of building in Australia is that you're very rarely going to be able to build a billion-dollar company just by servicing the Australian market. It's just too small. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough companies. We don't have a big enough market to be able to build a company of that sort of scale. So Australian founders really do need to think quite carefully about how they're going to go global and how they're going to attack international markets, and potentially from day one rather than just purely thinking domestically. I guess another part of this kind of global game with AI is that we are seeing the beginning of regulations emerging. For those who have been following it, the EU has just released a regulatory regime around ethical AI usage. Recently, we're starting to see the DOJ in America and the States start to take action against startups for anti-competitive behavior because of the way that their AI models work. So it's really important for those building in AI and scaling in AI to be thinking about how is this technology going to be applicable within the regulatory frameworks for other markets? How do they future-proof their product and how they're building it? What are the unintended consequences of what they're building that might attach regulatory scrutiny or regulatory concerns either today or in the future? So having a global game means thinking more than just, how do you attack international markets, but also about how will that product be absorbed by those markets and what are some of the risks that come along with that as well.
Thanks, Michael. So, yeah, I mean, following this, so we have this like scaling and growth is really important now. So, definitely, I want to just ask you a bit more detail, like what kind of applications or which AI application has the most potential in Australia as a unicorn, for example?
I would love to hear from our other panelists as well, who definitely have deep subject matter expertise. I think particularly Nicola, we've got AWS. They are the preferred cloud provider for a lot of AI builders from day one. I think to kind of connect your question with your point, Michael, around like speed to market, which is a huge competitive advantage when you're building a startup. Has anyone in this room heard of Leonardo AI? A few folks in the room. So very recently, Canva acquired Leonardo AI. From the documents that have been made available, that acquisition was a $320 million acquisition. There were 3 co-founders of Leonardo AI. They started that business in their garage 18 months ago. So in 18 months, a generative AI platform that was able to create these incredible visual and graphic assets was able to go from 0 to 320 million. That 320 million was also paid out to them when the startup was valued at around 120 million. So I think like the possibilities, exactly what you're saying, Michael, for builders in this room or investors in this room or the entrepreneurial spirit that's no doubt sitting somewhere in this room, it can happen very quickly and it can happen here. I think Leonardo AI is also particularly interesting because it happened here locally in Australia to a local Australian buyer. I think there are stories that are very unlike that here for us. I think in terms of applications that are likely to reach unicorn status, I wonder if Ed or Nicola might have some thoughts around what they see as some really high potential verticals that are currently being explored. I think go like this. Just go like this. You got to go.
This way.
Go like this.
So I just came back from a conference in Singapore in the main area of NLP called ACL. And everybody's 5,000 people running around there showing one another what their LLMs can do or what their LLMs cannot do without much thought as to why. And it struck me that there are lots of problems inside there that everybody would have a lot of benefit from if they could figure out why. For instance, why is it that when you say in a prompt something this way versus that way, you get a different result?
Hey.
How can you measure the prompt? How can you go to a company and say, or how can you put together a thing and say, you want to know this? Let me rewrite your prompt for you automatically so that I get you the best result you possibly could. Or, here's the thing and you get this result out. Why? Let me go and dig in and try with my prompt variations to see all the different reasoning paths inside. I have a student working on these reasoning paths that you can actually come back what Anthropic calls circuits. And you can come back and say, this is how this thing works. This is why it's doing what it's doing. Wouldn't you pay money to be able to figure out how to best write your prompt or how to best understand why this machine is doing what it's doing? There is a plethora of stuff that modern AI can, if you can figure out just one idea, that you can make a company out of this. I met recently with 3 or 4 ex-students, or 2 ex-students from here and 1 current student, who's saying, how can I actually guarantee that the best, that when you put in your request, you're going to get something that's ethically acceptable? So they have this whole big test suite of all kinds of questions, and then they say, okay, in your domain, we'll come in and we'll ask these questions, and we'll run these tests and make sure that everything is right. But that can be so much empowered by when you can go in and do reasoning paths and find little bad spots inside the memory of these transformers, and just find when I put in some ethically difficult words and I can guide it to an ethically problematic place, and I just do surgery inside. I just snip out that little node, or I snip out those pathways or something. There are ways to do that, I believe, right? I think there is lots and lots of ways you can actually apply knowledge when you apply a little bit of training to make companies, to make really, potentially really big startup companies. When Karen introduced me, she mentioned a little company I was involved with in Los Angeles in the mid-1990s called Applied Semantics. These are 2 guys who studied at Caltech, and they had this great idea. They're going to take Google, where you type English words, and they're going to go to something called WordNet, which was this big taxonomy of word senses, not just words, but the sub-meanings of words. And they're going to translate the words into the word senses, and then they'll have an unambiguous word. So if you say the word bank, they will tell you it's bank number one, a money bank, not a river bank or something like this. So they tell me they tell me, oh, we're doing this with semantics. I say, oh, you mean you're using word senses from WordNet? They say, how do you know? The idea was that shallow. And they worked on this for months, and they were really nice guys. And one day, apparently, they were kind of sick of what they were doing, and they just did a thing on the side. And they said, can't we apply this to do advertisements so that when you type your query, we can also pull out appropriate advertisements? And that became AdSense. And that's why they were sold to Google. They gave me a lot of stock. I became rich based on the stock they gave me from that. And the point is, they didn't think about this. They just did something on the side. It struck me that if you have a little bit, not in deep knowledge about generative models or AI models, and you allow yourself to be playful in what you're doing when you make your company, and you allow your AI to guide you left and right to do for all kinds of opportunities, you may strike gold in places that you didn't know. That could be really that entrepreneurial, exploratory kind of a feeling that can be very, very, very powerful for you. I think that's the sort of spirit that we should, that sort of exploratory, open spirit we should encourage. And I think AI, that playfulness of AI, is exactly the right sort of thing in which we should be doing for this. That's where I think one should play. One should take your idea and be open to lots of other ideas and let the AI guide you.
Thank you, Ed. Yep.
I actually find that a really interesting response, Ed, because when I was looking at this question, that's kind of the billion-dollar question that you're asking. If I knew, I'd probably be off somewhere building this startup myself.
I said the same thing.
I wouldn't be sharing it with everyone.
Yes.
But I was thinking through, what have I seen in the last year and a half, I guess, with the explosion of large language models. And, people started out building chatbots. I think everyone has tinkered with it, deployed something very simple, played around with it, realised that maybe they didn't really love interacting with chatbots. And now I think what we're seeing is people trying to think through how to integrate AI in a really seamless way so that it's not an experience where I, as a consumer, feel like I'm interacting with AI. Like, I think of the really traditional example, similar to yours, where, I want to introduce machine learning and personalization. And this is really commonplace now. I'm using machine learning models to re-rank my search results so that they're personal to me. And I, as a consumer, don't know necessarily that this is happening. I just think, these are more useful. I'm spending less time searching for things. And I think the more use cases like that we see in the next, 5 years or so, that's where it's going to be really interesting and really productive.
And if I might just give an investor lens on this, because so at Antler, we probably see 1,000 pitches a year, and we'll invest in about 25 to 30 companies per year. This is in Australia. Globally, multiply that by about 50. So we invest in 400 companies a year globally. And what we're seeing in our data is like 60% of these have AI as either core to their business or they're AI enabled. But I find the best way to understand this is from an Australian context is to think about the AI stack. And there's a lot of different types of AI stacks. So I'll just do a really simple one. But at one level, you have like AI infrastructure. The next level, you've got your models, your general models, and then on top of that, you'll have your specific models and then your application layer. AI infrastructure, this is where the trillion-dollar companies are going to come from. There's going to be a very small number of them, right? They're not going to come from Australia. You need an incredible amount of capital, an extreme amount of deep specialist expertise, and Australia is not right for that. Same with the general model layer. We're already seeing the winners emerging in that space. But when you get to the specialist models, excuse me, and the application layer, this is really the opportunity where Australia and Australian founders have a chance to win. And building on your comment earlier about like very deep, specific niche use cases, I think that's exactly the right way to look at it. There are certain workflows within industry that are very, very specific, highly nuanced, really, really tailored to their particular context. And the large horizontal models will probably never get to the level of fidelity where they're going to be able to really kind of, sell a product into that space. And that's really an opportunity for founders to build and, unlock a lot of value for those within that workflow, within that use case.
I think those horizontal first movers are going to play such a critical role in helping unlock customers to buy AI at enterprise all the way down to SME levels. But those first movers have historically, and I think moving into the future, will pay a price for being a first mover. They will invest a lot of resources, and it will be very time intensive for them to educate and get the trust and buy-in of businesses of all shapes and sizes to be ready to have AI-enabled processes, AI-enabled workforces. Those first movers, and they'll most likely come from those horizontal plays, are going to do a lot of work to kind of clear the way for these vertically very specialized deep technology AI enthusiasts to kind of come and own that market. It's so interesting you talked about Australia not being well placed for the infrastructure side of things, or, and excuse me if I've interpreted wrong, but potentially the hardware side of AI. Like, how do we, like, AI has to run off something. Like, it doesn't just kind of happen in this like non-tangible, non-physical vacuum. It's got to run on something. I read something really interesting from Casey Flint, who's one of the investors at Square Peg. She's kind of built a brand and subject matter expertise in investing in AI for the Square Peg portfolio. And she made a really interesting comment to me around how Australia could likely be really well placed for that very lower level of the stack because of our natural resources expertise and because of our history and our workforce that is so aligned to and experienced in the mining of natural resources, the processing and the export of natural resources, that there is the potential for us to build our own AI workforce that really focuses on that lower level of the stack. I'm not technical enough to really have my own take on it, but yeah, I just thought it was so interesting to hear both sides.
Yeah, and there's also, I didn't kind of mention it, but there's also like the angle of thinking about the picks and shovels that you sell to gold miners, right? Like, AI applications and the way they're used in the real world or all parts of the stack then lead to new use cases and new problems where those businesses or those needs wouldn't exist if it weren't for the ones that came before it. We've got a company in our portfolio called Aona AI, and what they do is they enable workforces in highly sensitive settings. So think like law firms, for example, so their employees can use generative AI tools without kind of breaching confidentiality, privacy, security, and also provides a way for the company to sort of manage that and sort of set their own rules around it. So they're enabling productivity while kind of sort of de-risking at the same time. So it's an example of where like they're not exactly an AI business, right? They're not using AI really in the way that their product works, but they are a business that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the proliferation of AI applications in workforce settings or in sensitive workforce settings. So, there's just so much opportunity out there. I guess as an investor, we're like super excited about it.
Is anyone in this room building an AI startup? If you put your hand up, I'm not going to ask you to tell us what it is. So feel free to, this is a safe space. Is anyone building one? So, okay, stealth mode, working out what problem you're going to solve. Do you have a vertical maybe that you're interested to build for, or you're thinking more a horizontal play?
It is sort of health related.
Yep.
Sort of a device that helps or assists children with speech impediment sort of thing. So currently very early stages, but yeah, it's very interesting.
Good luck. That sounds amazing. We've got an investor here on the panel, so you want to... I saw there's another hand just while... Oh, yeah.
I was about to offer $200,000 for 10%, but fine, don't worry about it.
I feel like that was another hand. Just if people are in the interest of sharing, it'd be awesome to hear if there was one other builder. Yeah, I'll run one up.
So yeah, we are just starting like our platform. It's gonna be a tool to help researchers to analyze and to provide multiple tools to help them work. I cannot say it like right now, but yeah, we are doing a lot of stuff with AI, and yeah, we are happy to like to use all these tools to for this app. Thanks.
Well, for the builders out there, one thing to really keep in mind as you execute on your business is that because the technology is so widely available and it's developing so quickly, it's actually quite difficult to have a technology moat to get an advantage through the tech you're building. It's actually quite important to get a moat through distribution, and there's the risk that this just turns into a land grab, and there might be lots of startups that end up growing quite quickly and then hitting a wall and dying quite quickly and getting replaced. So it's important to think really carefully about how do you get distribution fast and what's your sustainable advantage, what's your defensibility once you have distribution. Because I think we're going to see a lot of exciting AI companies that then also then die quite quickly as well.
So I remember the early days of web search. There's a thing called Lycos, built by Fuzzy Molden, which means spider, right? And then there was a thing called Alta Vista, some of you might remember, and a whole bunch of them, and Yahoo and things. And then Google came out, and it wasn't much better, but it had the PageRank algorithm, but it had the white screen and just this little box, and it didn't have a million ads and all kind of junk around. And people just naturally gravitated to its quietness and the fact it was slightly better, and it just slowly killed off the rest. And it wasn't really... The tech was good, right? But I think the other tech was equally roughly as good. It wasn't that you ran it as a normal human user. You didn't run a comparison between Alta Vista and Lycos and Google to see which one you just sort of used the one that was easiest. And just what you were saying, if you design something and you work with people who do the early adoption, and you actually make it so that it's seamless for them to adopt it and it just fills in, then you actually have a chance of getting across that hump, right? So often talking to CEOs and saying to them, tell your whole company, go forth, play with ChatGPT, come back in 2 weeks' time with one page, and the person who saves the company the most money, I will give a week's free holiday. Imagine that. Imagine how many ideas you're going to get, from the pallet stacker to the HR person to whatever, right? You don't know where the potential are, but those people know where they can make the best difference, right? And they will be able to do it seamlessly within their normal mode of operation. Then you overcome the change management. It seems to me that because of the plasticity of generative AI, it's so easy to build things now compared to what it was like, unless you built a big horizontal hardware type stuff, which costs a lot of money, right? You have to have some kind of other competitive advantage, and the advantage of adaptability and quick insertion into the operation of the company, I think, is a very serious competitive advantage that one should be able to exploit if one thinks of it carefully and does one's homework.
Thank you. So we may need to actually talk about this. So now we actually really go through all these skills and growth and how we just trying to handle this. And thanks for sharing these, what your experience now. So I actually have another downside now. I just want to double check, because whenever I teach my NLP units, I also actually have this kind of question always. So we have this competitive market in the world, in this AI startups, for example. Then how do they actually really manage this kind of ethical challenges? I know that there are so many ethical challenges in the world, but I want to just make it like really competitive to compare with other people. I mean, other company now. How do they actually really manage now? And what kind of ethical challenges do they have?
I can give one example that we are following really, really closely. I think I kind of mentioned it in passing, but the DOJ is investigating a company in USA that they came up with a tool for landlords to be able to work out the optimum price of their of rents for their properties. Right? We've got a residential property market here in Australia. We're pretty obsessed with that, aren't we? So you can imagine that would be probably pretty useful here as well. What's actually happened is, and this is completely unintended, right, is that the DOJ is investigating them for price collusion, because essentially the way that the model works is it's able to use other landlords' data to be able to kind of work out the pricing for your property, which essentially leads to a price fixing outcome. Now, I don't know where this case is going to go, but if you're a small startup and you're just trying to build and grow, the last thing you need is a what we would call an ACCC, or in America, the DOJ investigation against you, having to deal with lawyers and wasted time and reputational risk. But it's a really good example of having to do the deep work up front and thinking about how do you weave ESG, regulatory compliance, and unintended consequences into your product design strategy. I know that at Antler we do a huge amount of kind of ESG and sustainability health checks on all our founders, and we work with them to sort of embed it into their core product design to make sure they're building something that has, I guess, a sustainable value to the world, rather than something that might, create value for a short period of time and end up destroying a lot of value. And I guess the main aim there is to make sure they're building long-term impactful businesses that will be resilient to the myriad of circumstances that might come up in the future. And that's the deep work that we do early on in the company building journey.
Sorry, could I ask a question here? What's puzzled me is that we have very strong ethical sort of regulations, requirements in this country, more than some others. I've never actually seen an industry that grows so quickly and has the ethics and the regulation people following so closely on the development. It takes decades, right, before governments catch up. Here it's like next week. So couldn't one build an AI, whatever AI you're busy building, couldn't one have a sort of an adaptive ethical guidelines, guardrails component to it that sort of looks and says, I'm doing this service, but now I'm getting into hot water. I've been trained into knowing. So it's not like a passive thing that you do up front and you train the model like the human reinforcement feedback learning that they do in OpenAI, but it's a thing that's sitting as an operational part of whatever service the machine is doing. So it's watching and saying, we're getting into trouble here. I better not say anything now. I'm just going to switch off. I'm going to say, sorry, I can't help you with this. Now, we already have seen that ChatGPT and others do refuse sometimes to answer, but I'm wondering if one couldn't build some capability that is sort of generic, that a lot of other startups could take over and put into as an organic part, as a native part, is into whatever they're doing, so that they just say, I use this guard, this filter, the sensor, and I put it into my own machine, and I'm doing something for you, but this little machine is watching and it's thinking, it's co-thinking, it's guarding here. Isn't that?
I wonder, Nicola, you obviously advise startups almost day in, day out on their building journey. What kind of advice do you give, or common questions are you asked?
I mean, I was amused actually, Ed, because you used the term guardrails, and that's exactly what the service is called on AWS. So there are lots of different startups and obviously model providers who are looking into exactly what you're describing in terms of how do we operationalize these large language models, how do we get them working in production, and how do we guard against things like hallucination or, if we don't models to elicit certain types of responses from models. This is frequently a discussion, partly for ethical considerations, but also partly for, if I'm offering a certain value as a product, I don't want my, product to go off and do something completely different outside of the scope that I want. So it's definitely something that is frequently discussed with startups. And I think that operationalizing it, I think on one hand, it's never been a better time to sort of jump into AI because the barrier to entry is so low, but new problems and considerations are emerging around the operational side of things. So
What kind of challenges or operation side?
essentially you have a lot of software developers who are very used to developing in a certain way. So things are black and white, 1 and 0, true or false. And you have these models that give stochastic responses. I don't know what sort of response I'm going to get. So they're trying, a lot of the time, I think now like new processes are being developed to implement what we do in standard software engineering around testing, writing code, maintaining code, deploying code. And some of these models are being superimposed onto what's now called generative AI ops. So this is emerging, in the last year or two, and it's being designed and developed as people are getting things into production. So it creates, a lot of difficulties, particularly I think around that testing phase, because it's not necessarily, a yes or no answer. It can be quite a qualitative process. You have to go through, you have to design the prompts, you have to then, grade the output from that. You have to understand what a good output looks like, who assesses that within the organisation. There's all these really different questions that are coming up. And when you talk to technical teams, it's stuff that they are grappling with as they move to production.
I think there are two things that come to mind when you're speaking, Nicola. One is this really tired adage that the startup ecosystem refuses to let go, which is building the plane while you fly it.
I purposely did not use that one.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I really do apologize. But it is truly the only metaphor that makes sense. And I think AWS and private actors are really leading the way on, I know you guys call it guardrails internally, but I really do think like the metaphoric guardrails of building in AI, those guardrails are being designed and delivered by private actors. I was reading on my way here today that since 2017, Australia has invested from public actors. We've invested only a tenth of what Canada has in that same time period into AI research, regulation, and capability building. So I think whilst private actors have really taken the lead on being able to kind of shape the regulatory and ethical environment in which we're building, we are likely to see that investment, I think, really grow from our governmental and public services, which I think will start to change barriers to entry and might make it more difficult for builders to build in this environment. I just think we're just very much in this inflection point where the public world is going to become involved at any given time.
Thank you. Okay, so we may just change a little bit to someone actually in here, AI researchers, and also this startup. So just want to double check what kind of like critical skills or knowledge gap that AI researcher can focus on helping this kind of needs of the startup industry. So Ed actually is like AI researcher, and then all three like can just give us like a startup point of view, so we can just talk about it. Yeah.
So one of the things that I see is, I mentioned this before, I don't think it's necessary to really get deep into the technology. I think it's necessary to get into a level where people actually are really grappling. As you were saying, Alison, people are grappling with evaluation of prompts and outputs. It's a pair. I give this prompt, I get this output. I change the prompt, I get a different output. How do I measure? I can give it to you. You can say this one's shorter than this one, therefore it's better if it's the same level of quality output. How many metrics? There are a certain bunch of metrics I've been collecting from machine translation and other places that are not deep research that one can learn quite easily, that one can begin to put together to say, here is a skill that if I had that skill and if I had a company that can exploit that skill, I would have something valuable. Point two, how can I do prompt programming? It's not prompt engineering, it's programming a non-deterministic machine with a non-deterministic language called pseudo-English with a certain syntax and a certain format that's busy evolving now. How can I systematize that? How can I make sure, how can I actually measure that so I can write a machine that would learn how to take your prompt and then optimize and do hill climbing up into a better point? That's another sort of thing. You don't have to be deep technical to be able to begin to do that, but if you do that, you have something valuable. There's 3 or 4 ideas like this that I can think of that I'm busy training my students and talking to my colleagues and others about. This is what the university should be training. It shouldn't be teaching Python and C++ anymore because you have 5,000 students a year coming out of Australia learning that. You have 500 million people writing pseudo-English into ChatGPT across the world. That's the audience to go teach, right? That's what we need to figure out how to go teach. So it's things like that that we need to be able to understand. What are the challenges in this whole new paradigm of working where everybody can participate, and how can we quickly reach them, and what do we need to quickly teach them, and so everybody, the shopkeeper, the Starbucks owner, can begin to play with ChatGPT to make something that's better for them. That would be, I think, a very valuable thing for us to do as educators.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah.
I might just talk a bit about founder market fit. So to tell the backstory of Antler really quickly, Antler's mission has remained the same since the day we were founded in 2018. which is to back the world's best entrepreneurs from day zero to greatness. And to date, we've invested in more than 1,500 companies and the world's most active early stage investor, investing out of 30 cities. And the way that we do that is by bringing a highly curated group of high quality founders into a residency for a period of 12 weeks, and then with the opportunity for us to invest at the end. And in that residency, one of the key things we do is help find co-founding teams. And I just want to be really clear, co-founding teams, right? Not solo founder, but co-founding teams. And the thesis there around founder market fit is that you need someone who can build and you need someone who can sell. But also what we're assessing, and that's the execution of the business. How do you get from day 0 to day 1 to 10 to 100 and so on and so forth? But the other thing we're assessing is, why does this team have a unique advantage in being able to build this business? You should start for the assumption that if this is a good idea, it probably means that there are 20 other startups at least attacking it all at the same time, maybe more advanced, maybe with more capital than you, somewhere in the world. And you need to believe that this team is uniquely capable, has some unique spike or advantage that will enable them to win. So I guess in terms of talent, I think what's really important is to make sure that if you can find a great co-founder where one is a technical lead who can build and one has the commercial capability to sell and build the business and execute together, and two is to make sure you're building something or selling something where you've got a real right to win in the space. And the fastest way to do that is to come to Antler.
I'm actually so glad you took us there, Michael, because I was also going to say, if I was going to give advice to folks that either want to build or work for builders in this space, I think it goes back to a point that you made earlier, which is that your moat is not going to be technical. It will be the way that you go to market. And go to market is essentially a storytelling lever. How do you tell a compelling story to your customer? How do you create a compelling pitch for a future investor? I think that, to your point, Michael, we're going to just have a high saturation of problem solvers sharing very similar problem statements. So their point of difference is going to be the way that they are able to tell that story and bring people on that journey. So your go-to-market skill set is something that I think is absolutely invaluable when it comes to building and securing product market fit for your AI build.
Thanks, Taylor. I think it's really useful comments to most of the AI researchers here. Yeah, and Nicola, do you have any suggestions?
Oh yeah, I find the question of talent really interesting, actually. A lot of the, I guess, new AI products and services that we're seeing come through are very much targeted towards a developer market. So if you think about Copilot, tools like that, Amazon Q, I should say that one. Sorry. And it's really driving developer productivity. Productivity is a bit nebulous, but essentially, it's speeding up time to prototype, speeding up time to market, and removing, I guess, barriers to entry, because you don't necessarily need to be a great developer. Yesterday I asked Claude 3.5 to write up the code that I needed to deploy specific infrastructure. It did it in one pass. I deployed it. It deployed easily. That saved me about, an hour of fiddling around making sure I'd typed everything correctly. But I think there's a flip side to that, and I'm curious to get other people's take on it. If you're creating this code, there's still that maintenance phase of the software development lifecycle. You're still having to build future features on top of this. And if we're not, I guess, developing really, highly skilled people in development, is there going to be a bit of a time where there's a bit of brain drain, where maybe we don't have enough skills to support all that's being developed?
I think about this a lot. So my background before I joined Airwallex is I've spent the better part of this decade working for small startups. So from day zero, where someone like Antler comes in to run an accelerator to upskill your co-founding team, all the way through to a $25 million Series B with Combank. And that was through prop tech, climate tech, and now I'm in fintech. And I think what I see, so I work day in, day out with startups. We have an Airwallex for Startups program. And I think one of the solutions or unlocks for builders who are maybe getting to that brain drain point or are unable to maintain the build that they have in place because maybe they haven't upskilled or maybe they don't have the bandwidth to kind of continue to be at the top of their game, that's where your first and second and third hire come into play. And I think what we are so fortunate to have here now in Australia is we have a startup workforce who know what it's like to work under really intense conditions, know what it's like to get comfortable with the ambiguous. So I think that maybe there is something around like building teams around yourself or building teams around your product that can kind of co-build and contribute to what essentially might be some failure points that we have as individuals solving those problems. Michael, I'm sure you have a take too.
Yeah, we're always like pretty pessimistic about startups that are built on just like really thin AI wrappers. Like you need to have someone in the team who can go and build proprietary IP, and it might be built on top of another model, but they need to be building proprietary IP where the company is actually like able to deploy that IP, maintain that IP, build that IP, and have tech leadership over their product. Rather than something that just like talks to another model and then distributes it out. So we're also seeing like increasingly like startups think globally about like access to talent. Like they'll use contract devs from massive agencies out of Indonesia, out of India, out of Vietnam, and sometimes the Philippines as well. But over time, we do start to push them to, we say, okay, that's been great for you to get like past proof of concept stage or, you know, get your product out and get your first, say, 3 enterprise customers or, you know, 1,000 users. But over time, we really do want them to start to have, you know, a tech team that's in-house and they're really owning the end-to-end tech development process, and that there's a really strong CTO leadership that sits on top of that brings strategic leadership over the direction that the product's going and able to kind of manage a dev shop as well. Dev team as well.
Okay, so we now just running out of time. So I may just ask you some new founders. So I just want to double check, like, how do you capture this if you do not really have any AI background or specialty at all? Any kinds of advice that you want to give them? I mean, they want to just make it up the startup with using AI, but let's say they don't really have any kinds of specialty or background at all. Yeah.
I would join Build Club. I would find Build Club on LinkedIn. They do build bounties where enterprise customers will come with problems that need AI solutions, and you will collectively build with software engineers, with experienced AI technologists. I think community-led learning is really the future of building technical expertise. I know we're in a university, so I say that knowing that universities also deliver incredibly important learning journeys for students. But I myself am not technical. I myself do not and cannot write code. And I think for me, the skill set and the AI literacy that I've been able to develop just by immersing myself in collective and community spaces that define themselves as AI builders has been really helpful for me. So I think if you are based in Sydney, Melbourne, Malaysia, South Australia, Jakarta, there is a Build Club for you. It is a fully global community, and it's also virtual as well. So I think if anyone in this room is kind of like, I have to get my AI skills in order, that's where I would be heading.
To give it like a company building lens on it rather than a skill development lens on it, like just go back to first principles of like, what's the massive problem or pain point that you really want to see solved in the world, and you think you've got, you know, some unique insight on that problem or connection to that customer who's feeling that problem, and then go find a technical co-founder to help you build a solution to it. I think ultimately, like, the best AI solutions are going to solve real problems for people rather than just be like, you know, cool tools like using ChatGPT to waste time and crack jokes and have fun with it. Like at the end, that's how we all started with ChatGPT. It started as a waste of time before it became useful for many. I think it's important just to go back to first principles and find that problem that you think the world really needs solved, and then go from there.
Nicola?
I'm probably just going to echo really what's already been said. I think on the skills front, there's never been a better time to start learning a new skill. There's so many resources available. There's so many meetups. There's so many events being put on. I know the startup team, we regularly hold different events. You can come along to any of those. But it fundamentally comes down to what you were saying. If you know a domain and a space really, really well, and you can figure out how you want to optimize. Maybe it's a workflow, and that's kind of a really popular use case that we're seeing because it can save you time. Time is going to save you a lot of money. I think that's kind of what you really need to focus in on. It's not, do I have the skills to build something in AI myself? If that's not your thing, if you're not a technical person, that's totally cool. You just need to find somebody to do that with you who, shares that vision of the thing that you want to build and create. So pass over to Ed.
I agree. I don't have anything else to add. If the Starbucks owner knows that they need to do something and they say, I wish I had a machine to do this. How often have you not sat in your life and said, if only a thing could do this for me? Well, now you have a machine that can help you. It's called ChatGPT or some bloody generative model, right? It can probably program or suggest some way of some plan, and then you can find somebody who knows the tech part and you can go work it out yourself. It's the idea, it's the core pain point, that's the main thing. That drives everything else. So I think we've seen a whole shift now. It's not the technology that holds you back, it's the pain point that holds you back. And then the technology, you can find people and the machine has read so much more than we have. It knows so much more than we have. Let it guide you. But you have to find the pain point.
Our last question from here, and then we will just hand over to the audience. So, this general advice would you like to give to the new founders when they're just trying to leverage these AI technology or application? Is there any kind of general skill or checklist you ask them to just double check a few things before they start? Yes.
I can answer that question, but I feel like I'd be saying things I've said before, so I guess I'll reiterate the key ones.
It's like the most important thing.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, this is, when it comes to company building, it's all about execution. Ideas are so cheap, right? And you need to be able to execute on them. We've heard that in the go-to-market comments, which is kind of one way to think about it. And being able to execute really well is, there's some attributes that come with it. But importantly, if you're going to win, you need to have a unique insight and a real right to win. And that's kind of my number one piece of advice. If you want to build a company, whether it be in AI or not in AI, I mean, AI is a technology, right? It's not an industry. It's not a solution. It's not a product in of itself generally. If you're going to build in AI and you want to capitalize on this huge technology shift that's going on, then you want to find a space that you know better than anybody else, and you've got a real right to win in it, and then execute better than anyone else who's attacking it.
Maybe add.
I agree.
Okay, let's get some question from audience. So any question? So anything is fine, if you want to start up, or if you just helping startups, or if you would like to start, yes.
Just give some pointers of people who would like to invest in AI. I mean, I'm not talking big money. I'm talking share market type money. What will be the best way to go about it? Just buy shares in a venture capital sort of?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at listed markets, the multiples on the big tech companies are pretty high at the moment, which means AI is kind of priced into them already. So you're probably investing in potential upside, but also a lot of downside risk. So I'm just not sure. The reality is that, we heard, Airwallex, still private, yeah?
Very much.
Yeah. Companies don't go public until they're really, really big. So all the kind of value creation in in technology is really happening in private markets at the moment, which means by the time the public markets can get in, the companies are often already valued at the tens of billions. I mean, Canva's probably going to go public next year at like $40 billion, right? You've already lost all the growth. The people who made the money are Blackbird and the early investors and their LPs. So I think the best way to kind of get financial exposure to the asset class is to be exposed to venture capital. The challenge then being that it's really hard to know kind of what's going to win. So you want to be diversified. You don't want to be really concentrated because then you're trying to pick winners and let's be honest, like no one really knows. So I'd say diversified exposure to venture capital managers who have a agnostic strategy and are investing early would probably be the best way to get like diversified exposure to AI as an asset class.
I think if you're also looking to be like an individual mover, there are some really well-established and comprehensive angel syndicates and angel networks. So if you're looking to get into like an angel investing role, I know that there are some really incredible communities that I would be more than happy to introduce you to, who are very much thinking now about diversifying what they're investing in. And AI is seemingly at the top of every investor sentiment list over the last 2 quarters. I'm not sure that the capital is flowing at the same rate that the positive sentiment is indicating. So I'm thinking like next year would probably be a really big year for angel investment into AI.
Just be aware, venture is a 2-speed economy right now. Like AI businesses are getting really high valuations at seed in the early stage, and non-AI businesses are getting very low valuations. So it's just be really interesting to see how this all plays out because we still don't know. Yeah. But you got to be in it to win it, right? You can't wait 5 or 10 years to see how it went because by then it's too late.
Right, yep. Any other question? Yep.
Sorry?
Here, in the middle.
Michael, I'm afraid there's another question for you. So you keep talking about the technology and investing in based on technology, but you also mentioned about people who are running that business. So in AI, I think that what's needed in this country is like a deep expertise of people that who can go and transform the businesses. Now, do you ever invest in a company who is not selling product, but selling the expertise?
As in like a service-based company?
Service, yeah.
So one of the kind of thresholds for us to invest is going to be that it's what we call VC backable, which I'm sure many people have heard that phrase before. What does VC backable mean? It normally means they're attacking a very, very large market, like tens of billions of dollars minimum, and that they are growing with IP as their core asset because IP can scale very quickly, quite efficiently. So it's a capital efficient model. The problem with service-based businesses is they generally scale with human time, and human time doesn't scale efficiently. They are fantastic business. I worked as a lawyer and in consulting, and they did very, very, very well. They're just not venture grade businesses. In venture, our fund will invest in probably 100 to 120 companies. 80% of them will probably go to zero. A bunch of them we might get our money back, and 1, 2, maybe 3 of them will drive the entire returns of all the fund. So you really need to be able to get like 1,000x on an investment or any individual investment for this to work, and services businesses can't really generate that type of return in a 10-year period. So we don't, but I'm sure people do. Yeah, I don't know much about mining, to be honest, but yeah. I mean, so miners often think about risk similar to the way venture does. The returns are massive, but you can lose your money as well. So yeah, in Perth, interestingly, the private capital doesn't flow a lot into venture. It flows mostly into mining, and they've done particularly well, but the way they think about risk is similar. If anyone can convince Perth family offices to put more money into venture, it's going to create a lot of value for the Australian tech ecosystem.
Okay, yep. Yep.
Interested in your background in consulting. That's where I'm from as well. I see a huge in advisory businesses for models like ChatGPT to start playing a pretty big role. I'm kind of thinking it's probably the beginning of the end of traditional advice, that you provide operational advice, etc. So what are your thoughts on that? Have you seen companies playing in that space?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I've thought about this a lot, which is like, okay, I was in consulting for like 10 years and then, ChatGPT, which I guess is kind of like day zero for a lot of us when we think about the AI that we're talking about today, even though it's been around in different incarnations for a lot longer, came out after I left consulting. And I've often thought, wow, I think back to like all the things I did in consulting, how much faster and easier they would be with AI tools. And I actually caught up with the deputy CEO of the consulting firm that I worked at for a long time and just asked them what they're doing. And it's quite incredible how it's really sort of transforming the nature of their service delivery. I think, again, it just goes back to first principles, like what are the core elements of workflow? Which are the parts of those elements of workflow that can be automated using AI? How do you then embed that into your operation? How does that then unlock value, right? And we actually have a number of startups that are selling AI tools into advice shops, consulting firms, to take elements of what they do and make them easier. Specifically, we have one called Crafty. What they're doing is essentially they've got an AI tool for responding, like for tendering, for responding to complex RFQs. And it's a platform that ingests all your internal knowledge and IP and provides specific responses, and it's got collaboration attached to it to increase your win rate and reduce the time that you spend. I spent 30% of my time in consulting responding to RFQs, to tenders. So the second they pitched that tool to me, I was like, where were you when I was in consulting for 10 years? So, yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity for this technology being embedded into service businesses.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So you're saying if it's in response to EJ's question, if it's a human who does the consulting to improve the service, it doesn't scale. It's just sort of in linear scale. But if you have a human who improves the sort of consulting power of a machine and you sell that machine, that does scale. Right, so you can, as in response to your question, then you say, okay, now I'm going to have consulting. I'm going to have a consulting machine called ChatGPT Plus, say, and it's going to be trained by the human consultant to consult in different places, and that's going to scale more than linearly, and so that's worth doing. So aren't all the big consulting firms now busy doing that like crazy and just training generative AI to make consulting advice systems? Isn't that what they're doing now? Or should they be doing that?
I don't necessarily know what they're doing, so I don't work there anymore. However, if I go back to like my consulting career, I feel like we're a bit off piste here, but I'll give it a crack. Like where the magic is in deeply understanding what the kind of business and organizational needs of your customers are, being able to engage stakeholders to create alignment and to be able to influence, and that's a inherently human endeavor. And then the analytical work that happens in the background, often by more junior staff, can still be, can be supported by AI tools, I would have thought, especially around a lot of the analysis work and research work and drafting work. Where I get, so this might sound insane. I don't use any AI tools ever, deliberately. I never use ChatGPT. I don't use Meta AI on WhatsApp. And the reason that I do that personally, it's a personal choice, doesn't mean it's right, is because I know that the number one value added thing I do in my day is think really clearly, and it prevents me from thinking clearly, right? So I guess to apply that to consulting, like it's really important that you don't do shortcuts and that we end up in a world where we have AI-generated data feeding AI models, basically just creating this flat intelligence across the world without nuance and depth and customization. So that's how I think about it on a personal level. And I'm sure consulting firms think about that really carefully as well. And I think it's also important that, the whole way that AI is built out takes that into consideration.
What do you think, Ed, about this?
Well, I'm thinking there's an opportunity for a pyramid scheme here in the short term, right? Where you just go and say, I'm going to train the consultant machine. I'm going to sell everybody a consultant machine. It's going to put out this sort of pseudo-helpful spam consultant advice. And then I'm going to come in and we're going to go together and we're going to say, now we're the deep thinkers. We're going to fix this problem. And so we have double, right? So we can sell the pyramid out first. And when that pans out, then we go with the real stuff. That sounds like a business, no?
Nicola, do you want to add something?
I know. I think what your point actually, where you're saying, it was kind of what I was trying to get at. I think a bit with my comment about the brain drain. Like, if you have tools that are essentially developing on your behalf, and you think about it not at the company level, but at the industry level. My question always comes back to if I were entry level person in that industry, how is my learning impacted, and what's the repercussion going to be, not right now, but in 10, 20 years. Maybe we'll have tools where, it'll advance so much that's not a problem. But, if we don't have people with that critical thinking skill set and that ability to think deeply about technology or about a domain, there's potential pitfalls there as well that I think we do need to factor in. And that again, my personal view. So, but it is something I think about.
Ed, again, do you want to add something from there? Okay. Yeah. Last question. Yeah.
I mean, I've got one example in terms of the legal industry. Obviously, there's considerations there. It can be pretty fraught, and we've got customers like LawPath who have introduced AI into their workflows in order to triage questions, in order to speed up time to respond. Yeah. But I guess what I'm getting to. I guess what I was getting to at that point is that when we're seeing some of these use cases going into production, there's still a human in the loop. So there's still someone assessing what has come out of that particular, AI, model. So I think in those high-risk scenarios, that's what you'll be seeing. It won't be AI generated, no one actually going and verifying what's been produced, whether or not, if you wanted to add anything to that.
I don't think we're there. So I still think AI at the moment is like a companion or a co-pilot. I mean, that's a branded tool. It's a tool that's helping humans do what they're trying to do. So it's almost like it's being watched over, right? And there's always human intervention at the end of the chain, at the end of the workflow, or an ultimate human making the final step. But the next wave that's coming is actionable AI, which is where the AI doesn't just spit out the answer, but it goes and implements the answer for you, right? And we've already got a high degree of integration across software and systems in our lives that you can sort of see how that can happen. If you think across what's on your phone, you can ask a question and it can just basically do all the things that you need it to do. I think that's where this is going to get really, really interesting, when there's less human intervention and decisions are made by AI that actually leads to actions later in the workflow. That's probably going to open up a whole can of worms in this space. But I haven't. There's one observation I'll make. We have a company called Dark Patterns Labs. I don't know for those who are familiar with dark patterns. No, I hadn't heard of it either until until we invested in these guys. So if you've ever like been on Booking.com and it's got like one left at this price, right? That's an example of a dark pattern. It's like if you say that and you actually have more than one left at that price, you can start for like massive enforcement action and fines. So I don't know if this is in the high risk space, but they're essentially solving that problem using AI, servicing law firms, but also large e-commerce players like Agoda, helping them, scan through all their terms of use and terms of service and scan through all their tech and being able to flag dark patterns before they go live to customers. So that's it, sort of on the periphery, I think, of what you're asking, though, isn't it?
I just want to add that I've been working quite a lot with Jeannie Patterson from the law school here. She's a professor of law. And whenever the question of risk and regulation and things comes up, she makes a strong point of it, saying, I don't care if it's a machine doing the work or a human doing the work. The work that is done is the product of somebody, ultimately, who is doing something. And if something bad happens there, if there's a court case, if there's some kind of culpability, it goes to that. If it's a human or a human plus a machine, it goes to that unit there. So when companies look at this and they say, I'm going to put a machine out there and it's going to do something, I'm the culpable one. So I'm always going to put a human in there. So I think your partnership model is going to go for a very, very long time before we see truly independent, autonomous, agentive, generative models, sort of separate things where I say, I want to go on holiday to Cairns for 2 days, book me the trip. And it'll go and touch my credit card and get my plane fare and then come back with the agenda and say, it's all done. I don't think that's going to happen for a long, long time. I think what's going to happen is it's going to check in with me every day, every time, every step.
Capabilities there to build.
The capability will be there, and people are going to build agency on top of things and your plugins and all kinds of things. But every little step of the way, everywhere where somebody feels they're going to be vulnerable, and if there's something goes wrong, the lawsuit comes to them, they're going to say, I want my hand on this thing. I want to check it with my eyes. I think that's going to be a break on development, which will hold back agentive and autonomy, a lot more than technically is necessary. It's just going to be socially necessary because that's the way the legal people are going.
Okay, we need to run on the end of this panel. Thank you very much for all the panelists here. Yeah, give a big applause, please. Yeah, and we would like to thank you to Shanika, so she will actually do the closing comments. Yeah, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shanika Karnasekara. I'm the acting dean in the Faculty of Engineering and IT, and I'm also a professor in the School of Computing and Information Systems. Thank you for joining this panel event, generously sponsored by Avalux. And we have just had the privilege of hearing this esteemed panel talk about the transformative technology AI and how it is going to change the landscape of startups and our future. I think we all agree that the panel's insights for AI in reshaping the world and driving disruptive growth was quite insightful, and we all enjoyed the panel, and I hope everybody enjoyed the panel as much as I did. So as we move forward, let's embrace this technology, and let's try to use the maximum use of AI in an ethical way so that we build a better society. So I would like to thank the Melbourne Connects events team for putting this event together very successfully, and our Airwalks partnership manager, Sarah Kenny, for pulling this event together with a very esteemed panel of insightful talkers. And then let's take a moment to thank our panelists for their valuable contributions. Thank you, and I invite you to enjoy the networking event, build new connections, establish collaborations, and foster new partnerships. Thank you for joining.